Lloyd, what did you think of the last presidential debate?
Boring.
Why is that?
They just talked about the same stuff over and over and over. And they talked about Libya and whether Obama had done enough for security. And the thing that popped in my mind is, who cares? Half the people watching that show are going to die from heart disease. Another 10% will die from cancer. And I was just thinking to myself, what difference does it make? Who cares about Libya? No matter whether President Obama did a good job or a bad job, it's kind of irrelevant, relatively speaking, because we're in the worst economic downturn in 80 years. Half the population is going to die from heart disease, and my thought was, who gives a damn about Libya? The other thing I thought about it was, I think Romney made a big mistake. Issued a national press release suggesting that he challenged President Obama's abysmal track record on small businesses. And the government likes to paint me as a conspiracy nut, a lunatic, whatever, so I always stick to the facts. Fact one, U.S. Census Bureau says small businesses create over 90% of all net new jobs. Fact two, the Kauffman Foundation said small businesses have created 100% of the net new jobs since 1980. Pick one, over 90 or 100%. Either way, it's irrefutable that small businesses create the overwhelming majority of net new jobs in America. Well, what's the biggest program in America to try to create jobs and, as President Obama calls, invest in the middle class? What is it? Do you know what it is? Do you know what the biggest program in the history of America is to reinvest in the middle class? It's the Small Business Act. It's a federal law passed in 1953. And based upon that law today, 23% of the total value of all federal contracts and subcontracts should go to small businesses. Nobody mentions this on the news. In fact, I doubt if you will. It's puzzling to me. So I heard Wolf Blitzer say yesterday that jobs are the #1 issue, in the election, the economy. Yeah, you're right, jobs. Small businesses create the overwhelming majority of net new jobs. The biggest program to create jobs for small businesses is the Small Business Act. And yet, every year that President Obama has been in office, his own Inspector General, a woman that he appointed, has come out and said the #1 management challenge at the Small Business Administration every year that he's been there is the fact that large businesses get federal small business contracts. Nobody's mentioning it. It's insane. It just drives me out of my mind to sit there, and watch TV about people talking about jobs and reinvesting in the middle class. It's about small business, folks. America is a small business economy. Census Bureau data show that over half the private sector workforce works for small businesses. Over half the gross domestic product comes from small businesses. Over 90% of all exporters. And according to the Census Bureau, and I think their information is pretty accurate since it went out and knocked on everybody's door, that's pretty accurate compared to like surveys and projections that everybody else does, like the Labor Department. So the Census Bureau data to me is very accurate, and they say small businesses create over 90% of net new jobs. They didn't mention that. Neither one of them even mentioned it. To me, it's insane that we're having a serious conversation about our economy and how to create jobs, and they will not mention the fact that small businesses create over between 90 and 100% of net new jobs, and they will not mention the fact that the biggest program for small businesses has been hijacked by Fortune 500 firms that most likely have not created one net new job in over 30 years, according to the Kauffman Foundation. So I watch those debates and it just drives me nuts. The only reason I watch them is because I'm going to get calls from journalists and have to do radio shows talking about it, or I wouldn't even watch it. It's just so maddening. Also, the other thing I think about the debates is those two gentlemen have no intention of doing what they are talking about. So what they say in the debates, what they really do, we've seen. Have you not been here in America for a few years? Remember George Bush Sr., no new taxes, right? So what they say during the debates and the campaign and what they're going to do are two totally separate things. For example, Barack Obama said he'll have the most transparent administration in history. Well, Bloomberg and the Associated Press have found he's got the least transparent administration in history. Can't believe that Mitt Romney didn't bring that up. Or Candy Crowley or somebody. Obama said it's time to end the diversion of federal small business contracts to corporate giants. He said that in February 2008. The truth is that his administration is giving more small business contracts to the biggest companies in the world than ever. If you look at, we're talking fact. Look at the federal procurement data system. Look at the top 100 recipients of federal small business contracts and you'll find 72 are large businesses. It's a fact. You don't get to have an opinion about that. If you don't like me and think I'm a conspiracy enough, tough. It's a fact. Is it Roseborn Exports? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
An international arms dealer owned by the Russian government got $370 million in federal small business contracts. It's a fact. Finmeccanica, an Italian defense giant with, I think, 75,000 employees around the world, got millions, if not billions. Was it billions or millions they got?
Millions.
Millions? Millions in federal small business contract. It's a fact. Look it up. NBC, are they conspiracy nuts like me and they're wackos? No, they're not. NBC looked into the recipients of small business contracts. Guess what they found? IBM, Hewlett-Packard, Oracle. It's on the internet. Look it up, NBC. I believe NBC, ABC, and CBS have all done this story. In every case, they found Fortune 500 firms getting small business contracts for over a decade. So the debates, I don't think there's any point in watching them. Neither one of those guys is going to do what they say they're doing. I think they're both lying. And I think the truth is both of them are controlled by the billion-dollar corporations that fund their campaigns. So they're not there to represent the American people. They're there to represent the large corporations that are paying the bill for those campaigns. I think it costs $2.5 billion to be president. Well, that's not coming from people like me and you. That's coming from AT&T and Exxon Mobil and all these big corporations. So it's very unfortunate. I think that when you look at what's happening in America, I think it proved this isn't a democracy. And again, I'm a small business guy. My number one thing for 12 years is try to get the government to quit giving small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms. What do you think? You think we should be giving small business contracts to Fortune 500 firms and Russian-owned arms dealers during the middle of the worst economic downturn in 80 years? I'm sure you'll agree with me that we shouldn't. But guess what? We are, and it's going to continue. And I'm afraid if Mitt Romney doesn't start talking about this, I'm afraid that means he's going to keep it up. So I certainly hope that Mitt Romney will challenge President Obama's definition of a small business and challenge the documentable track record of a lack of transparency. Because if Mitt Romney won't bring those two things up, you can just bet your bottom dollar he's going to continue those anti-small business policies that Obama has been pushing for the last 4 years. So that's what I think about the debates.